So there are a lot of different takes online on smoking weed and getting your fitness right, and more specifically, smoking weed while on a fat loss cut, right? A lot of people say it's not possible. Some people say it's possible. And I'm here to tell you guys it's definitely possible. And I actually smoked every single day while I was on my fat loss cut. So it's definitely possible, but it comes with some caveats. And there's a few things you should think about if you're going to be smoking on your fat loss cuts. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe for some more fitness tips, and yeah, more videos like these where I'm going to be talking about just life and, how it is when you're doing a fat loss cut and how to stay on it. So subscribe, like for more, and also leave a comment. Would love to hear any other tips that y'all might have. And so basically from my 20s on, I've been a huge pothead, smoked every day, every night. There was definitely a period in my 20s where I was high pretty much from the time I was awake to the time I went to sleep, right? So it was pretty crazy times for me. But I managed to get my stuff done, right? I was a huge pothead, but I was still excelling in my career. I was still, maintaining friendships, relationships. And so, it never really held me back other than, making me kind of lazy sometimes. And then eventually getting into my later 20s where, your metabolism slows down and then you keep getting high and you get the munchies and you start to eat a lot of BS that you probably shouldn't be eating, but your metabolism is a lot slower, right? So you start getting fat. So that's something you got to look out for as you get older, especially in your late 20s, early 30s, and you're still smoking daily, right? But I honestly don't see too much wrong with it. And yeah, I started my fitness journey and my fat loss cut smoking every single day, right? And so the main thing with smoking every day is just the munchies, right? And if you're able to control your munchies, then you're all good, right? I think it's fine to continue smoking, right? And some people get the munchies, especially at night, they can't control it and they start eating BS, right? And so that is kind of the main thing with smoking, right? Is being able to control your munchies. And I did this actually in a few ways because obviously I would still get the munchies, but there's ways to kind of curb it. Number one is going to be diet sodas and sparkling waters, right? And so this was something I did long before I was even on my fat loss cut, right? I would always have some sparkling sodas, things like LaCroix, or there's also some called like Waterloo, whatever they might be, just make sure they're 0 calorie, right? And you can drink those pretty much all day, right? And so I would get the munchies and I would be drinking those and it would kind of curb my appetite, right? And this is um, a technique I would use even at night, when I would get the munchies, and I'm like, you know what, it's way too late to eat right now. So let me pop open a LaCroix. I had maybe two or three of them, and that would fill you up, make you a little gassy, but fill you up. And your munchies would go away. You would get a little sleepy from the weed, and you would knock out, right? So that's, I think, tip number one. If you do get the munchies, have some sparkling sodas, and even diet sodas, right? Diet sodas I really only got into when I was in my fat loss cut, because I never really cared about soda or anything like that. But when you're in your fat loss phase and you're cutting, you're gonna get a craving for something sweet, right? And it's just going to be really hard to fight it off, honestly, especially the further you get into your cut, and especially if you're smoking. And so, having something sweet like a Coke Zero or Dr. Pepper Zero fucking rules, by the way. Having something sweet like that is going to help you mitigate those sweet cravings that you're going to be getting, and especially if you're smoking and you get the munchies, that's going to be a great little snack that's going to kind of fill up your stomach, make you a little gassy, and kind of kill your hunger, right? So that's going to be number one. Having some sort of like mineral waters or diet sodas. Another thing that's helpful is like pickled items, guys. So pickles, specifically, I think the brand that I like is the Mount Olive ones. Those are completely 0 calories, right? So if you get the munchies, um, you can definitely eat hella pickles, which, it definitely helps a little bit with those cravings, right? Um, and so, yeah, the Mount Olive brand is 0 calorie, but even then, like the Grillos pickles, I think those are super popular. I don't buy those, but I see them around a lot, and they come in a lot of different flavors. Those are good too, right? They're like 5, 10 calories, and so you're going to want to keep whatever you're snacking on very low calorie when you get those munchies, right? Also, things like kimchi, right? Kimchi is great for snacking, and it's spicy and it's a little stinky, but hey, it gets the job done, and I really like it. So things like that are kind of like pickled, like kimchi, or just pickles themselves, or even the Korean pickles. Those are like a little sweeter. Those are great snacks to have around. You also have like the spicy carrots that are like very popular in Latin America. Having things around like that are just like very low calorie are going to be key, right? If you're going to be smoking while you're on a fat loss cut. And some of you might be thinking, well, why do you need to smoke while you're on a fat loss cut? Why should you even do this, right? And I sort of have a kind of strategy, I think, for going on a fat loss cut. And this was kind of what I used, was just not to overwhelm myself with too much, right? You're in a very vulnerable state when you're, first of all, adjusting to the gym, right? A new routine that you have to stick to every week. Ideally you're doing cardio too, right? Either whether it's, just doing your 10K steps or doing some incline walks on the treadmill, and that's taking up a lot of your time. And then you have your diet, right? And so your diet is probably going to be the hardest thing to stick to, right? Because there's just so many temptations. It's just a very new adjustment, and so those three things right there is already a lot of mental capacity to take up, right? And the less you can sort of like not change up what you're doing by too much, the better, right? And so I made another video about this where, I kind of stopped my artistic endeavors. I stopped my creative endeavors at that time. And I really just focused on like playing video games and de stressing after the night, or after the day and after my gym and whatnot. Because if you overwhelm yourself and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do the gym, I'm gonna do my walks, I'm gonna do the diet, I'm also gonna cut out weed, and I'm gonna cut out alcohol, and I'm gonna also read 10 pages a day, and I'm gonna do this and that, you are gonna overwhelm yourself and you are not gonna be able to stick to anything, right? And so you gotta take it easy, especially those first 2 months, man. If you really want to build that lifestyle, which you have to if you want to get lean, if you want to lose fat, and if you want to get results in the gym. Take it easy, right? And so I was smoking during this time because I said, hey, I'm already doing a lot. Smoking at the end of the day is going to be like my reward, right? And so I would get high, I would play video games, and that helped me a lot and helped me to stick with it, right? And so if this is you, I know a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't be smoking and it makes you lazy. You know what? Those first 2, 3 months, you just focus on you, man. You have a good time, you enjoy your week, enjoy your time off from the gym, and really just focus on staying consistent, right? And if weed is going to help you do that, it helped me. I think it's totally fine, right? But make sure that you are not getting the munchies, right? Really crazy, and eating all this BS. And there are those tips I gave you all on things that you can eat and things that you can drink that are very low calorie, that are not going to ruin your diet, and you can enjoy those things, and have the munchies as well. The other thing with weed, of course, is going to be, it's going to make you lazy, right? And so you're not going to want to smoke um, on before you hit the gym, right? Because that's just going to make you lazy. I'm not going to lie, I did have some days where I did smoke before, but I noticed how just harder it was to work out when I would smoke, right? You would just be a lot slower. It would feel more of a drag. So really, I do not recommend smoking before the gym. Take the time to be in the gym. Eventually it's going to become meditative for you. You're going to be really in your body. It's going to be a time for you to think and really be present. And eventually it just becomes meditation for you. It becomes an awesome moment of your day. And now it's probably one of the favorite times of my day is when I go to the gym, right? But again, you want to build that habit first. And especially those first 2 months, it's going to be tough, but just stay consistent, and especially in your fat loss phase, just stay consistent with it, right? It'll go by quick. But you can always reward yourself with smoking after the gym, and that's what I would do, right? I would get high after the gym, and just enjoy myself, right? I think weed can also be kind of helpful when you're on your recovery days, right? And so again, you look forward to your recovery days as like, okay, I did my, 3, 4, 5 days of the week at the gym. I hit all my steps, I did all my cardio, I get to enjoy myself, right? And I would kind of make myself a little bit of a bigger meal, not going over my calories, right? But what I mean is maybe combining like my breakfast with my lunch, right? Maybe fasting a little bit in the morning on my recovery day, having some black coffee, waiting till maybe 11 or 12 to eat. And then boom, I would get high and make myself a big meal, right? Kind of combining my breakfast and my lunch. My lunch was like ground turkey with rice, and my breakfast was like an avocado toast with eggs, right? And so I would make this big meal, right? And if you're on your dieting phase and your fat loss phase, whatever you want to call it, you're going to know that whole foods are very, very filling, and they're very hard to eat like like fast food, right? Fast food, it's like 1,000 calories. You can eat it like nothing. But whole foods, like 500 calories of whole foods is a lot of food, especially rice, ground turkey. That's a lot of food, So you can smoke, you can get really high and kind of feast, and that's what I would do. I would again have that avocado toast, that ground turkey and rice, and maybe even throw in a banana, right? And so that like right there would be, I don't know, 700 to 800 calories, 900 calories, which was like half of my calories for the day. So that's why I would kind of fast a little bit, wait until midday to eat and get high. And then yeah, the rest of the day I still had my other two meals, because I had 4 meals as a part of my fat loss phase, and I recommend you have four, especially if you were a big back like me, because that's just going to mean you're going to be eating consistently and you're not going to have any cravings during the day, right? So, yeah, another tip, right? You can use it on your recovery days to kind of have a feast, and that way you're not thinking about, oh my God, I want to order some Uber Eats or some DoorDash or some other BS, right? So, um, yeah, another tip for smoking while you're on your fat loss phase, and I'll share and I'll kind of end up the video here is that I'm not smoking anymore, right? I'm not smoking every day. I actually just got rid of my bong. And yeah, the thing is that once you start getting into fitness, and if you really, really get into fitness in the gym, and you finish your cut effectively, it becomes so addicting that you start to learn how to delay gratification and get your dopamine from delayed gratification instead of quick dopamine hits, which come from like weed or alcohol or video games, or just anything, right? Anything that's instant, like social media, right? So eventually you get there, and you want to start working on things that are actually going to be meaningful, right? And that's basically what's happened to me is, I'm working on my social media, I'm working on my music on the side, and then I'm working on my body, and that takes up pretty much all of my time where I don't really have time to smoke anymore. And on my days off, I'm just working on stuff. And if I smoke, I'm gonna get kind of lazy, right? And I just get dopamine differently now. So that's naturally gonna happen to you if you really lock in. And so again, I also feel like you don't really have to worry about cutting out weed, making it a conscious thing. I think it just naturally you'll naturally cut it out after you start doing this for a while, right? It just makes sense, for anyone that gets this far, right? And if you're going to want to get farther, if you're going to want to bulk and keep your leanness, right? Being lean is a full-time job. It's a mentality, right? You're going to have to stay consistent, and we just won't really align, so I naturally cut it out. That doesn't mean I don't smoke here and there. I smoked with some friends recently. I actually got way too high, uncomfortably high, so my tolerance is way low now. I got to watch out for that, right? I was like struggling in public. So I'm not against it. I'll smoke here and there, but I'm just not having it in my house anymore. I'm not waking and baking, just because I'm busy. Honestly, just because I'm busy. But hey, if you're in your fat loss phase, smoke your weed. Do not get crazy munchies. Don't order some BS. Stick to eating low calorie foods. Also with the low calorie foods, I'll mention you can also do veggies, right? Like celery sticks. Um, and carrots and whatnot. But again, you can go overboard with things with calories, so that's why I recommend stick to the sodas, stick to pickled stuff, and that's going to be your best bet, right? But yeah, you can totally fit it in, right? I think it's definitely possible, to smoke and also be on your fat loss phase, right? Just stick to it, stick to your plan, but enjoy yourself, right? I am very much a proponent of, it's a tough phase. It's especially that first cut's going to be the hardest thing you ever do, probably. And you want to enjoy yourself. You don't want to overwhelm yourself and kind of fall off the wagon there because you committed to too much, right? So that's pretty much it, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Be sure to follow me on socials, in the description. But if you have any questions, hit me up on Insta, hit me up on TikTok. Leave a comment down below if you have any tips, any good snacks, any good drinks, 0 calorie drinks that you can have while you're on your cut. And yeah, guys, I will catch y'all on the next one. Later, y'all.